Hello, good evening and welcome. Hopefully you will be able to hear me. I am waiting for that obligatory 30 seconds so I know if you can hear me or not. In the meanwhile, we can listen to the noise of my fans as they go crazy with my broadcast software tonight. I have no idea what's the matter with it, but it's making a rare old noise here. Not at all sure that my iMac's very well. But anyway, hello if you are with us. Tonight we are using the live chat in YouTube for the first time. So I'm going to go in and say hello, and hopefully there'll be people there and you can say hello back to me. So let's get that one done first. There we go. Hopefully there'll be somebody there. You never know. Funnily enough, my watch figures have just dropped. So maybe I should have just stayed off air. that would maybe have worked better. So if you're there, say hello. Good evening, Charlie. Good to have you with us. Oh, we're picking up viewers now. So what we usually do is have a quick chat. If you've got any questions about what we did last week, which was Affinity Photo, or what we're going to do tonight, Affinity Designer, then pop them in the chat there. Say hello. It is different. Yes, it is very different. This was because people were telling us that they were watching it on YouTube and they wanted to do the chat on YouTube. So we thought we'd give it a go. Although neither of us are experts with YouTube chat, that's for sure. But it's there under the video. I can see it. So that's a start. Oh, you've got a spanner next to your name.
That's because I'm a moderator.
Oh, not really, not an engineer then. I've got a little crown. That means I'm the superstar. Maybe not. So if you've got any questions about last week, so we looked at Affinity Photo. We've been looking at Affinity Photo for the last 4 sessions. Not to worry. We are now moving on to Affinity Designer. We will be returning to Photo. I've just had a message from Graham, so I'm assuming that Graham can actually hear me. Luckily, Graham, I'm wearing my watch, so you've just come through Dick Tracy style to my watch. And Graham's saying he's having trouble using the chat. That's not great, is it, Graham? I would say, what's your problem? You'll have to DM me what the problem is. Right, what browser are you using? That's a good start, isn't it? I'm in Chrome, but I do think other browsers do work. I believe you have to be logged in. So have you got a YouTube account or a Google account? Either of those should do you. Once you're logged in, on the right-hand side, it says live chat. A little bit further down the page, you should see your own avatar. And underneath that's a little smiley face thing. You should see your name. Mine's in gold and there's a little crown next to it, but underneath that it says say something and there's a blue line. I tried clicking on the blue line or just under the blue line because it's very, very pale on my screen, but actually it's actually where it says say something. So I know what we can do. What I will do is I will take my screen live to make sure that you can see my screen, and then I will drag this on the screen, and then hopefully it will all make sense instead of me explaining it and describing it and all kinds of things. So let me queue up my iMac and get that shared and move my browser onto here. There we go. Let's take that full screen, and now hopefully this will make more sense. Right, so you should be seeing my screen now. With 11 of you watching, 12 of you watching. Hello and welcome to everyone who's joining us. This is pre-show, and we're trying to work out why poor Graham can't use the chat. So here we go. You'll get a very weird effect of my screen being probably behind your screen, I think. But what we're talking about is a chat on the right-hand side there. You can see I've said hello, Charlie's in there, Mike's in there. And what you need to do is log in. So you can log in at the top up here. And then down there where it says say something. So I shall put hello and good evening, everyone. Do you know it's impossible to type and talk? Well, it is for me. Right, so I should put that in. That should come straight through. Graham, if you're still having problems, DM me. I will get my phone so I will be able to see it. Having shut down absolutely everything on my computer, and my fans are still going crazy. My broadcast software is running at 165% of the CPU. So if you're hearing a little bit of noise, that's what it is. Also, I've got the window open, which has proved entertaining today.
Oh, shut it.
No, we can leave it open for the moment. We've got a good 8 minutes yet. So as I say, if you are watching, do pop something in the chat. Say hello. Any questions you might have. Are you using it? Grant. Someone with the brain here. Grant has custody of the MacBite's brain tonight. I do believe Graham uses Firefox. From memory, Graham uses Firefox. So Chrome might be the answer. So let me go in and have a look at what Twitter is saying. Oh, can't type anything. It wants him to create a channel. No, Graham, you don't want to be doing that. You shouldn't need to create a channel. You should just be able to log in with your Google account. You shouldn't need to create a channel at all.
Well, Heather's using Firefox.
Heather's got Firefox and hers is okay. Okay then. Anybody using anything different than that you can that you could let us know? That would be very, very good.
Don't use Chromium.
Oh, no, don't use Chromium or Canary. I don't think either of those.
Because it got a message that says your browser does not recognise any of the video formats available.
I do believe that's because there's been an update this week, the last couple of days, that's removed Flash.
Oh yes, Flash. You can't kill Flash, it's a safe for the universe.
Well, that's very true. But what else can you say? No, Ellie is using Opera. Graham, you're with us. Sorry about that, Graham. Lots of other people were having problems with the other chat because they wanted to use this chat. Can't win, can you? Cannot win. So we've got quite a few users in different browsers.
That's good.
Ellie must have listened to me when I did one of my very first presentations was about Opera. 2004, do you remember that one? I'm not surprised you remember that one. Just before I did this presentation, and I on Opera. This was a paid for thing. Opera used to cost 40 quid. 40 UK pounds, and I paid for it. And just before, show me your memes. Shout me out. There you go. I've shouted you out. Love the avatar. Love dogs. Graham, fantastic. That's great. Yeah, I was telling you about Opera. Just before I delivered this presentation about Opera, I was going to woo people with it and show them just how marvellous it was. How much better than Internet Explorer, which was #1 browser at the time. How much better it was. And I was innocent, wide-eyed and innocent I was, that if I showed you how good it was, people would instantly switch and pay their £40. And I got told in no uncertain terms by one of the potential attendees that no, he wasn't switching no matter what, not to worry about it. It's very meta, don't worry about it. I'm going to move my screen now, at least you can see my desktop. There you go. Now my two black squares are either side of my video. That's what it was. So I've moved it now, and I'm going to whip back to my poster, and then I'll share my desktop again shortly. Oh,
we need some videos to go on his channel.
Graham, you do. Do you know what I'm thinking? Oh no, he wants to delete it. No, Graham, what you need to do with it is put some videos on there. Some Hitman and her clips. That's what we need. Anyway, my Opera story. So he told me in no uncertain terms was never moving no matter what. He would pitch up and heckle, and that was it. So I decided, oh yes, he was. So I redesigned my entire presentation, and it scared the attendees witless, didn't it? It was all about malware and how it infected you via your browser on Windows. And before the end of the evening, he'd switched. He didn't use Opera, though, because it was paid for and he wasn't prepared to pay, but he did move to Firefox, so I'm claiming a partial victory on that one. Okay, so I've moved that off the screen. You should be seeing a poster now. You'll be seeing my screen shortly when we start to share, which is in about 4 minutes, I think. I think you should be able to delete a channel, Graham. The idea with the channel is that I think what they're thinking is you can put other videos on it other than stuff of your own. So I'm guessing that's what it's for. I've got one channel. You can also create multiple channels. But the Hitman and her clips, that would be fabulous, because I would love to see some of those. Oh, they would take me back, I'll tell you. A lot of people create channels and they actually just post other people's videos on them. Mine's only got my stuff on. I do like other videos, but I haven't created playlists that have got other people's content on. Might be an idea. It's handy if you want to pull together lots of resources for particular applications. So on my own channel, I've got a playlist for Affinity Photo, a playlist for Photoshop. Might be an idea to make a playlist rather than a channel, but a playlist within a channel to pull other people's content through to it. That might work well. You could favourite all my videos, Graham, and then pull them through to your channel. That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? Good evening. Is that Javiak? Good evening to you. Right, okay, what's the time now? I'm blind with this thing. Oh, we've got 2 minutes. 2 minutes. So if you've got any questions that you want to ask straight away, feel free to put them in there. You can put the questions in anytime you like. What Mike is going to be doing is keeping his eye on that chat. I will be able to see it sort of. It'll be off on a second screen. I won't be able to see it when I'm looking at my slides, but I will be able to see it, or at least read the questions at various stopping points as we go through the session. So that's what I intend to do. Well, I didn't know that, Graham. I have never known that. Obviously, I've already got a channel, so it would never have prompted me, and I don't have any other accounts to test it with. You've already got a channel as well, haven't you, Mike? So no, it wouldn't do that with you either. Oh, there's always one. Mike's got 2 channels. I think that's 2 separate accounts, though, isn't it? It was a cock-up on his part. It's all right. I did the same myself. I've got 2. They did let me have my own name, though, on my second account, when my second account got much more popular than my first account, which was quite alarming because I had my own name on the first account. But never mind. It all worked out all very well in the end. So as long as it worked out, we can all say we're happy, can't we? Right, I'm going to set my screen up now. You won't see all of this. You will see the poster. But I'm setting up my screen so I can see what I need to see. And I will then get my... no, I won't. I won't get my slides going just yet, because if I do, then I won't be able to see the broadcast software. Oh, it's all very complicated at this end. But all will pan out. All will pan out. You'll see my slides, you'll see my desktop, and that we can run Affinity Designer. So let me know in the chat, do you have Affinity Designer? Are you an Affinity Photo user? Will you be using Affinity Designer? You really like the way I explain things. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Hopefully, you'll get lots of explanation tonight as well. This is a 101 session, so I'm not assuming anybody knows anything, which is probably safe with Vector. I must admit, during preparation for it, Mike says good because he's no expert with Vector software. But you do see me living in it, and it's fabulous, isn't it? So it's always worth knowing about. Yeah, I've even learned a few things myself, so hopefully you will learn a lot tonight. Right, we are heading up to 8 o'clock, so I'm going to get my screen set up, and I will be back with you. I'm going quiet. I'm going to go quiet. I know that's unusual, but I've got to edit this later, and as Mike well knows, the air's blue when I'm editing with the YouTube editor. So I'm going to go quiet, get it all set up, and then I will be back. Do not think your audio has gone if I don't say anything. I'm going to leave the microphone open, and you'll probably hear the fans whizzing away. So you should at least hear that. Okay, hello and welcome officially. Tonight, I'm looking at Affinity Designer. Affinity Designer 101, complete beginners. No knowledge expected, required or needed. First of all, who am I? I'm Elaine Giles. I am a long-time trainer, been training for far too long. Let's leave it at far too long, because we're getting up into the 20-odd years. It's far too long. Also podcast host and inveterate geek. Love my software, particularly my Affinity Designer software. I have used Illustrator for a long time, but since I switched to Affinity Designer, not used anything else. Don't even have Illustrator installed. But before we actually look at Affinity Designer, I know a lot of people have already contacted me, and you have said the one thing to think about first: why do I need vector graphics? Some of you have been Affinity Photo users, and you're asking if you're missing anything by only using Affinity Photo. So let's address that first. Won't take more than a few minutes with the slides, but some valuable, I hope, explanation as to why vectors are needed, why you are going to love vectors. All right, here's an example. On the left-hand side of that, we have what that image would look like if I scaled it and it was pixels. On the right-hand side, we have what it would look like if I scaled it, and it was vector. Now, this was a real image that I created for a presentation I did a few years back, and I did it in vector, and hopefully that image on the screen, you can see why I did that. There are generally 2 distinct types of graphic apps, vector-based and pixel-based. And as I say, that's an example of the difference between the two. The vector retains its quality when it's scaled, and it is preferred for scalability. The reason is, and there's another reason, which is the file size is also usually much less, because it's a set of instructions rather than a pixel grid. So in your bitmap editors, this is what happens. This is how an image is made up. It is made up of squares in a grid. your pixels on a pixel grid. But in vector, it's smoother. It's made up of points and paths and curves, and they are recalculated when an image is scaled. And that is what makes it look crystal clear, absolutely pin sharp, rather than that pixel grid just being stretched. Now, it's not a cure-all. It doesn't work great for photographs, but it's best for logos and graphics with blocks of solid colour, and that includes gradients. I use vector graphics all the time. Here's just a few examples of that. Everything that you see on there is completely vector. The map pin was made in Keynote, which works with vectors. The text is vector and the map in the background is vector, which means that I can scale it and I've got no problems at all. I also create infographics, and all of those are vector, which means I can repurpose them. I can make them much smaller if I want to put them on Twitter, Facebook and other social media, but I can also make them much larger, take up whole pages. I can get them printed and they print out absolutely perfectly. In relation to infographics, you could also use it for website mockups and iOS mockups. So here's a mockup of a web browser with one of my web pages in it. The Chrome of that browser, and it is based on Google Chrome, but the whole of that browser was actually created in Affinity Designer. Now you're thinking, well, why bother? Well, I can take screenshots of my browser. I'm sure you can take screenshots of your browser. But I have plugins and add-ins, and I invariably have 20 tabs open, and it just looks messy. And I can clean it up, tidy it up, but it takes time. So what I do is just take a screenshot of the middle bit of the browser and then wrap it in a vector chrome around the outside. And I have none of those problems to worry about. I mentioned the file size. Tonight's poster was designed in Affinity Designer. This one's actually for my next session, sneak peek 102. The PDF version of my vector file is 153K. That's not bad, given that that is full HD quality to put on my videos, and it's got a gradient on it. Now, by comparison, the same size in JPEG was 632K, and that was only at 60%. So if I flick back, you probably won't notice too much difference on the stream, but trust me, there is a big quality difference as I sit and look at it, and that's even with it scaled downwards. So that's why vector. But why Affinity Designer? Well, I've said there are so many uses for vector, but that I've moved everything that I do with vector into Affinity Designer. So why? Well, one of the big reasons is there's no subscription required. It is currently £48.99 in the Mac App Store. There is a trial version, which I'll mention later. But there's no subscription, there's no ongoing cost. I'm assuming when version 2 comes out, we will need to pay for it. But it will be your choice whether you upgrade or not. It's not a monthly bill landing on your doorstep. It's also amazingly, amazingly fast. It's the best vector application I have ever used, and I go back a long way. It wasn't my first one, but I used Corel Draw. There was another one that had a panda in it, and I'm frantically looking at Mike to tell me what that used to be called. Harvard Graphics, it's come back to me. Harvard Graphics on a PC, circa the early 90s. That was the 1990s, I'm not that old. So this one, by far the fastest. It also has a huge range of file formats that it supports, including Photoshop, Illustrator. You can edit PDFs in it, Macromedia Freehand, SVG graphics. In fact, I'm using SVG graphics to transfer files from Sketch to Affinity Designer. So its file format support is amazing. One of the things that Affinity talk about a lot is the scaling that's possible, the zoom level that you can get to, that over 40 million% is possible. Now, I'm going to show you that later. It is actually amazing to see. The level of detail you can get is just completely stunning. In addition to those few things that I've mentioned, it's got an extensive range of features. You can edit pixels in it, there's masks in it, there's blend modes, you can create PDFs, you can work with PDFs. So there's lots and lots that you can do in there, but even better than that. Although the first application in this suite was Designer for Mac, it was closely followed by Affinity Photo for Mac. Then both of those were released for Windows, and I bought them for the once, probably in a year occasion when I'm forced to use Windows. Affinity Publisher is, we are promised, on the way. So really this is only the beginning, and I'm hoping in the end that I'll be able to use Affinity software for absolutely everything. Just to push the point about only using Affinity Designer for vectors, I've done this demonstration before, and when I did, I double-clicked on an Illustrator file and it started to crank up Illustrator, and 20 minutes later it was open. Today I double clicked on it and instantly thought, no, I wanted that to open in Affinity Designer. And I realised I don't have Illustrator installed anymore. And that's from somebody who actually has a Creative Cloud subscription. So there you go. But that is enough of me and enough of my slides. Let's go in and let's actually have a look at Affinity Designer and see what we can do with it. So I don't even have Affinity Designer open yet, but I will shortly. What I've got is a range of files to work with. And I'm going to start off by looking at creating new files. So I'm going to run Affinity Designer. And it's having a rare old think about it. There we go. I don't think I've made too many changes to the interface, but there you go. Now, one thing to show you that I've actually turned off is that usually you will find the welcome screen. So I will manually show that welcome screen. What you will find in here is useful information. So in addition to promotional information, there is actually some useful stuff in here. You've got these panels that will show you specific things. So you can get a free UI kit if you buy Affinity Designer. You can also watch a video of what's new in 1.5. There is a book available as well, so there's information about that. And it's telling you that Affinity Photo 1.5 is out as well. Now, that's the information your eye is drawn to, but over on the right-hand side, you've got two options that are incredibly useful. You can view the sample files and you can view tutorials from here. So, for instance, in the sample files, if I just click on there and go into it, you can see here that it says there's featured work and there's some circles. Now, that isn't actually the featured work. I'll take you through what's in there. And they are just jump-off points to the featured work. I'm going to click on that Poked Studio one. That drills you down another level. And in here, you've actually got files that you can download and examine. And they're not just PNGs that you look at, and that's it. These are actually files that you can go into, see how something was done. So if you like how something was done particularly, so let's have a look at this space one. I've just clicked on space, the cloud icon's disappeared, and what it's doing is it's downloading that in the background. I'm probably freaking out my poor machine as it does it, but certainly my internet connection. But never mind that. What I'm going to do here, I am going to go back and go to space. So I've clicked on that space again, and it has loaded in the file. So in this file, as I say, it's not a flattened file with no detail in it. If we look across on the right-hand side where you can see the layers panel, we have all of the layers as that was designed. And if I open these up, you can drill down and see more detail, every single element of that. Now, having said that, these files are locked. So if we look at the top here of the screen where it's got the name, it says space and it says locked. So you won't make any changes to it, but you can actually see that in there. And as I say, you can zoom in and have a look at these things. So what I'm going to do is position myself over this shape, which looks a little bit like a skull. And I want to see that more. I want to see it closer up. So as I do that, you start to get the idea for this zoom and how you're zooming in there. And you can carry on zooming. Then keep zooming. And you'll see it retains its sharpness. That's one of the reasons for using it. So I'm going to use Command and 0 to get back to the full level there. And go back. So now that what I'm going to do is just close that file. I'm going to go back into Help, going to go back to Welcome. If you want to see that screen every single time, make sure that there is a tick in the box. If you don't, take the tick out of the box. You can always get back to here through the Help menu, Help, Welcome. That will get you back to here. And you can use that Home button to take you back to the top level of this Welcome dialog box. Now, what I actually want to do is to create a new document. So I'm going to go and click New Document. If you didn't have that displaying, so you've turned off the welcome screen, you get to exactly the same place with File and New from the menu. That brings up the New Document dialog box. Now, there's a lot of work that you can do in here to make your life easier down the line when you're working. So what I mean is by setting up a file correctly before you start. Now, the first thing to do is to choose the type of document. So just to show you here that you have got 5 types of documents, 5 categories. Depending on what you choose here, your page presets will change, which is the next level down. So if I was to choose web from there and then page presets, these are all the presets I have available for web use. If I go back and choose a different one, so devices are incredibly popular, and bring up the details for that, have a look in there. We've got iPad 2, iPad Air Retina, minis, iPhones, all kinds of stuff. I'm often asked why no iPhone 7. Well, it's the same size as the 6, so that would explain that. But we've also got new things like the watches, so they are kept up to date. Now, I'm just looking for something fairly basic. You've also got print available from within here and photography, so I'm going to just choose web, and I'm going to leave it set to 1280 by 720, which is a size I work in a lot. Because it's the size of my slides, it's the size of my video, so it makes sense to make it 1280 by 720. You can also set up your colour profiling in here, and you can override the settings if you want. So if you want to change that page width, you can. You can also use the portrait option to flip it, so it's on its side. So portrait rather than landscape. Landscape's the default. And you can, particularly if you're using it for print, you can set the margins on it. I can actually choose to leave that alone, and that will give me a file that I can then start working with. That's all I need to do for that. So hitting OK gives you a file to start working on. Now, if at this point you think, made a mistake, need to change it, you can go back and change things with the document setup dialog. It's got pretty much the same information in it, possibly a little bit extra, but it's displayed in a different way. So it's got these tabs across the bottom as well as these drop downs from the top. So you can actually change your document in hindsight, as it were. I don't actually need to do that, so I'm just going to leave it in there like that. So I've created a new file in there. The other thing you may well want to do is open an existing file. Now, if it's an Affinity Designer file, that's relatively straightforward. Go and find your file and open it. Or you can go up to File and Open and find your file that way. But what if you have a file of a different format? Now, I've got some Illustrator files. So what I'm going to do is I will show you briefly my files. So here are my files I'm working with tonight. The one I'm interested in is this free vector Christmas nighttime AI vector. And I need to drop that on my dock, which I will do. But my dock is hanging off the screen. On the other screen, it's right across on the left-hand side. So I'm dragging and dropping that. You won't see it drop on the icon, but you will see the file open. And this gives me, it says PDF options for opening this Illustrator file. And I'm just going to open that. That will do nicely. There we go. It tells me there's an assigned profile, which is fine. I'm okay with that. And there is my vector. So in here, this was an Illustrator file. As I open it up, you can see all of the curves that have come into this from Illustrator, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of stars on there. So as I'm scrolling down, you can see snowflakes, all kinds of things in there. So it doesn't open it up and flatten it. It opens it up and it brings in the information. So it's all editable for you. Just to prove the point in it being editable, have a look at that tree. I will just zoom into that tree. That tree's black. It shouldn't really be black. So I'm going to double click to select it and then select the one next to it and just very quickly make one quick change, which is to go into my colours and find a darkish green. That needs to be a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do with that, we've got a darker green, a muted green. There we go. There's a much more muted green. There we go. What I could do with that is flick over to the colour and change it in there. So I actually want it, much more emeraldy. That's a nice green. There we go. So it retains its editability. We will come back to that file later. But at the moment, I'm going to close it. Don't need to save it. Right, so we have this new file that we have open in the background. I'm just going to show you some vector tools, because when you're working with a vector application, you're going to need tools to create shapes. And you have two categories of these. There's actually vector shape tools, which start down here. So let's zoom in and have a look at that. Your rectangle tool, your ellipse tool, your rounded rectangle, and then you have this one, which is the not the artistic text, next one up. It says crescent tool, but it's lying. Well, not completely. It's lying a bit. By default, it's actually a triangle tool, but underneath there you have a disclosure triangle. Under that, you have all of these different type of shapes. So as I say, the triangle tends to be the default. And to use those, you just need to go in and draw with them. So choose the shape you want, draw the shape out. There we go. So there's all four of those. Now, that presupposes that what you're doing, what you want to draw, can be made from pre-existing shapes. A lot of the time they can, but sometimes you might need to actually draw things. And for that, you have another range of tools. You have the pen tool, you have the pencil tool, vector brush tool, gradient tools, all kinds of other tools to work in here with. Now, I'm going to start off with the pen tool, because the pen tool is one of my favourites, one of everybody's favourites in vector applications for getting the job done, but can be quite difficult to work with. If you've never tried the pen tool, or you've tried it once and run away screaming, I would understand that. And the thing with pen tools is they tend to be different in every application, and Affinity Designer is no different in that regard. So what I'll show you is I'm going to click, and then I'm not holding anything, I'm just moving away and click. Move, click, release, click, release, and so forth. And it makes straight lines between the points that you are clicking. Now, at that point, I'm only clicking. I am not moving when I click. But if I move up to the top and click, and now I'm holding the mouse, and as I pull it, instead of it getting a straight line, it gets a curved line. And if I keep doing that, pulling round, so what I'm going to do there, I know it's moving the canvas slightly. Let's do this. I can draw curves with it. So I must admit, I'm not a great user of the pen tool. Most of the stuff that I do, I can get away with shapes, thankfully, because I'm no great artist, but I can do what I need to do. So there we are. So I'm going to take that down here now because I need to finish it off. At this point, we have an open path. I could format the stroke on it, but I can't fill it because it's not actually a closed path. To close the path, let's make a few more of these. There we go. I need to get back to the first point, which is that one there. When I get there, if I just move slightly, and I know it's very, very tiny, and if I zoom in, it'll totally disappear, but your mouse pointer changes, and it's got a tiny circle next to the pen tool. And what that is telling you is that if you click there, it will close the path. Once the path is closed, I can then actually give it a fill. So I can go and fill it, change the colour of that fill. There we go. Now, you could be forgiven because lots of other applications work this way, that if you go back and hover over a point, so I'm actually hovering over that point there. When I hover over it, you see I get a different colour there. As I hover over it, what I expected to happen was it would let me move that point. So if I wanted that point to be equal between these 2 points at the top, surely I should just click and drag it. Well, no. That's going to let me edit the point, but not in the way I want to. So I'm going to undo that. What you need to do is one of two things if you want to move that point. One is hold down the Command key. And as I hold down the Command key, it changes my tool, and I can now move it. Move it between those 2 points. So I'm going to move it up a little bit and get it almost right between them. That was the Command key. The other way to do it is to change tools. At the moment, I have the pen tool. But if I press the A key, it switches to the node tool. And once I've got the node tool, I can carry on and edit all of these. So if I want to move these up a bit, or anything else I want to do with them, no, not that. I'm trying to move this. There we go. I can do that. I can use these handles to change that as well. So that's using that node tool. But with the pen tool, you can temporarily move into the node tool with that Command key. So that's what it's doing. It's temporarily entering you into the node tool. Right, so that's actually drawing them out. Obviously, there is a lot more to drawing than that. If what you're doing is creating characters and curves and all that kind of thing. But that's for 102. That's for 102. This is 101. Let's get back to the shapes that it gives you and see what you can do with those. So I'm going to delete that shape. Now I'm actually in the node, so let's get rid of that. And there we go, delete the shape. I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at these tools that we've got here. So I can draw out a rectangle. If I hold the Shift key down while I do it, I get a proportional shape. So this time I get a square. The same is true of the ellipse. Draw it out with the Shift key and you get a perfect circle. And I'm going to try this third one, which is the rounded rectangle tool. So I'm keeping that square. This time there's a difference with it because I'm going to show you now, going back and getting that move tool, that if I go here, I can scale these things. I still have to hold that Shift key down to scale it proportionally, but I can scale it with the scaling handles. If I drag out on a side handle, I scale it in one direction. On this shape though, in here, if I double click, so with this tool I can select it and I can move it. But if I double click on that shape, it's a smart shape. It's like, not exactly a smart object, it's a smart shape, and with it, it has this point on the edge, which is a red point. When I hover over that red point, so let's see if we can do that. When I hover over that red point, you can see that I get a line. And what that line is telling me is the extent of the movement I have available for that red point. So if I click and drag it inwards, it will go into that level. And if I drag outwards, it will make it a perfect square. So I'm just going to lose my magnifier so you can actually see that happening with the black headed arrow. So there we go. So I can do that with it. Not every shape has those red handles though. So the rectangle tools, they didn't have that. The ellipse didn't have that, but some of the ones in here do. So let's draw out a triangle. That one's got a red point on the top, and what that lets me do is change the angle there. So for the Pythagoras lovers amongst us, there's a right angle triangle. You can change the angle of that triangle. And there's a lot more that you can do, the more complicated the shape actually is. So if we look at the star one, for instance, that is the default for what that looks like, but that one hasn't got just one shape, one red handle on it. It's got three. So we have the one on the outside, and now it's giving me an entire circle as well. And what that's telling me is, if you do that, that's the width that you can get on it. So you can really change those shapes. So that's what that one does. Hovering over the others will change the point. So that will let me drag that one inwards. Let's take that back. Go over that one, and it will let me go outwards or inwards and make it very sharp. So mix and match these few things together and you can get very, very different effects. So now it's virtually a flower. Or you can do that. The other thing that you can do in relation to that is add extra points. So at the top, we have a toolbar across the top. We will look at that more as we go through it. Then we have this context-sensitive toolbar. What that is giving you is different depending on what tool you have selected. And with the star tool selected, you can see we have points and we can add points. There you go, all the way up to 48. Not looking much like a star now. There we go. And you can also change these things in here as well. So if you want to do it numerically, you can. Or you can do it by sight. So you can change all of those things in there. So I'm just playing around with these. There you go. Not bad, not bad. Right, so let's go out and have a look at all the shapes we've got now. So that's some shapes, but if you only could do that with the shapes, wouldn't really be fantastic, would it? Wouldn't. What would be better is if you could manipulate these shapes to create other shapes from them. That would be even better. So what I'm going to do is show you the vector tools and shapes, but show you, where are my groups and... there we go, my groups and curves, there we go. I've got a file to open. So I'm opening this file. I'm going to show you now how you can take shapes, be these shapes you have drawn with the pencil tool or the pen tool, or the built-in tools, and what you can actually do with them. So I'm putting a square up there. I do want that to be a square. So I will make sure I hold the shift key down as I go. And I want a circle. And I want a perfect circle, so I'll make sure that I hold that down as well. So let's take that up to 180. There we go. So I have these two shapes, and I can move them around, put them one on top of the other. What we need to see, though, is what happens with these shapes. So what I'm going to do is make sure that my rectangle is on the top, not the bottom, the top. There we go. So the rectangle is actually on top of that circle. To be absolutely certain that we know about that, I can change the colour of it, and you can see it is actually on the top. If the circle was on the top, let's bring that up to the top, you would see the entire circle. So we are completely confident that the rectangle is on the top, and it is now the right colour. So there's my two shapes. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to put these here, and I'm going to duplicate them. I am going to drag these over there to the middle and drag another set over there, because I'm going to do different things with them. I don't think it'll come as any surprise what they are. I'm going to group these first two shapes. So making sure they're both selected, and it is Command and G to group them. And there they are. There's the group over in the layers panel. So you can actually see I have a group there. And if I open that disclosure triangle, you can see I still have the shapes inside it. So that's what we have there. The good news about that is it means I can double click and I can go in and I can edit it. I can actually move these things around. Because what I actually wanted to do, if I just undo that and show you that, the blue handles here are not actually lined up with the edge of the rectangle. So I actually didn't really place them properly when I did that. But we're going to come back to that. We need to think about that. So I can double click and get in and edit them though. So let's have a look at this one. I'm going to select, no, you keep jumping, stop jumping. Right, I'm going to select the two of these. And this time I'm going to use what's called a Boolean operation. And I'm going to join those shapes together. And I do that at the top with my Boolean operations here. And I'm just going to add, you can subtract, you can work out the intersect, you can divide them, or you can combine them. So you have 5 different ways of working with shapes. I'll just take you through them and then you'll get an idea for what they are. So if I add them together, I get one new shape. And it is both the shapes that I had completely merged together. If I undo that and show you what subtract does, it takes away the top shape from the bottom shape. If I go across to the intersect here and do the same, it leaves me only the part of the two shapes where they intersect. If I go back to divide, that will separate them out. So I'm now going to have to show you that they're actually 3 individual separate pieces. So I'm using undo to get back to where we were, and there we go. They're now 2 separate shapes again. And then there's the last one that takes out the middle bit there where it overlaps. It's sort of the inverse of the middle one. So let's come out of that as well. So I've now got my 2 shapes, and what I said we were going to do, make them look like they do in the first one, which is a group, and that was the add. So add them together, and there they go. We now have one new shape. What is different this time is as I look at my layers, it says curve. So we had group and we now have curve. That means it's one individual shape. There's nothing to expand. There's no way I can actually go back in and do anything, but we'll come back to that. Right, the last one is compound, and what I'm doing there is selecting the 2 shapes again. I do want to add them together, so I do want to use this add option in my Boolean operations. Do want to do that, but not in the same way. So how I'm doing this is by holding the option key down. And this time when I do that, it looks the same. There doesn't look to be any difference on the canvas between this compound shape and this group and the curves. They all look the same. But if you look over here at the layers, which is why this file is called Group, Curve and Compound, the first one is a group which has a disclosure triangle, which shows you the shapes that are combined to make it work. The compound one in the middle can also be opened up. So if we move over there and open that up, we have a rectangle and an ellipse in it. They are 2 separate shapes, but that curve one in the middle, that's not. It's one individual shape, and that is it. So that shows us that if we want to make a change to a path that we've made or shapes that we've merged together in some kind of way, if you are in a group, you can double click and you can move that up, and you should be seeing that you have a green line and a red line. The green line shows you that you are aligning those shapes vertically. The red one, you are aligning them horizontally. So that is now in the right place. That's perfect. If I go onto this curve one and I double click on that, oh dear, it's correct. What it's doing is showing me handles because it is a curve and curves have handles. And I can drag them out, but what I can't do very well at all, not unless I was incredibly skilled, and I can make a stab at this, but it's not perfect. I can hold these points, these nodes, and think that if I grabbed all of them and pushed it up, would that work? Well, it sort of would and it sort of wouldn't. I can't see when it's snapping properly. And as I move it inwards, I get these 2 white points. So no, that doesn't really work properly. That's because it is one single shape. Now, my compound path, on the other hand, over here, looks exactly like the group, in a way. If I open it up, it doesn't look the same in the layers. I've got these 2 white shapes, it's showing me that, whereas this is showing me the full shapes. But I can actually edit them. So if I double click here, I can move this up so it aligns horizontally and vertically. And when I let go and click away, that has updated it. So it is one shape, it's behaving like one shape, but it also retains its editability. So if that's important, that you retain your editability and the most flexibility, I would make it a compound path. Now, here's why. What can compound do that group can't do? Because they look identical. You know, I can double click and I can select that and I can move the shapes and I can do exactly the same over on group. I can do that there. So why would I use a compound instead of a group? Right. If I double click into here, and you can see I'm now editing this. Let's go across and have a look at the layers again. I have my two shapes and I have this little symbol there. At the moment, it's a blue square with a plus on it. Where have we seen that before? Ooh, up there. With these operations, we had add, subtract, all of the other operations up there. And that is what that is showing you. If I can position this just right, I can show you that you can click on it and you can get add, intersect, subtract, and XOR. So as I hover over this, it even gives you a preview. So if what I wanted was to actually subtract, I can do that and retain the editability, which with a group, I'm not doing easily. So compound is by far the best way to work. You retain that editability. You can even go as far in here as to actually go into it and start making other changes. So I could copy that rectangle. I could, we'll leave it where it is in the layer stack, but then move that down here, and I've again completely changed that path. So I can do all things like that. So these are some basic vector concepts to understand. Once you've got these, you'll be going straight for it. You will be amazing. So these are the basics, and give or take maybe a different name, they tend to work the same in any vector application. Okay, so I will save that file. We will close that file. We can close that file as well, can't we? So let's close that file, don't need that. Right, so what can you do with stuff like that? Well, even with very basic things, you can get somewhere. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to make a new file. So file new. And this time, I know what size I want it. The size I want it is a 1024 square. So I'm going to OK that. There we go. Now, I have a file to use as a reference here. So I'm dragging that in. And this is the health app off your iPhone, off iOS. And I'd like a vector one because I'm sure you can see just how pixelated this is. It's horrible. I would like a vector copy of that because I'm going to use it in a presentation. And this one actually couldn't be easier now you know the basics. So what I need for my background is a rounded rectangle. So I draw out a rounded rectangle there, taking it to the full width of the canvas. And because I've got my shape at the back there, all I need to do with the red handle is take it up so it just covers the entire thing in the background. And that means I've got my shape, got that sorted now. I'm now going to turn that off so I can see my reference layer and I can see the heart. Now, I could try drawing that heart by hand, but I don't need to. If you go back to the shapes over here, the very bottom one there is a heart tool, and it will enable you to draw out a heart, and it can be all kinds of shapes. So I'll try and get it just about right, but not worry about it too much, because I can move it into position, and that's obviously far too small. What I will do is aim to get the height of it right, and then start altering the width. At which point, that's not bad at the bottom, but you can see it's not really right at the top. So what I can do, if I double click on that, it is a shape with a red handle, which means I can take that up to there and get it just about spot on. That looks perfect. Next thing to do is to give it a fill. So I'm going to move it off to the side because the colours it needs to be are in this background. So how easy would it be to get those colours in there? Well, it's not just a fill. Adding a fill is simple. If I go over to my colours here, I can just choose a colour. I can even choose a pinky colour. I can also go to swatches and choose from a range of palettes. So, for instance, I personally have got an Affinity palette that I created myself. So I have the Affinity Pink and this is Affinity Photo, all the colours of the Affinity apps. I've even got Microsoft Office, which I'm sure everybody's thrilled about, so I could have an Excel heart. I know somebody who would love that. But we need something better than that. So you have access in here to your WebSafe colours, to crayons. So you should know crayons. Crayons are available from the system. And that gives me a decent range of colours to choose from in there. But I need better than that. I need the colours to match. So what I could do is use this eyedropper up here, my colour picker. And I can click and hold, drag it down over where I have a colour and release. That doesn't do a thing. This throws a lot of people. If you go back though, it has picked up that colour and you need to click once more to apply it. So let's see that again. Let's drag it down over my blue here. It adds it up there and I click once to add that colour to the shape. But still, it's not right because it's got a gradient on this heart in the background. So I actually need to add a gradient colour to this. And I can do that with my gradient tool. So it says fill tool. So go in there. And what I can do is now draw one out. So I'm going to click at the bottom and draw upwards, keeping it straight and go up to there. I have one shade of blue at the bottom and a lighter shade of blue at the top. If you want to see that gradient, you can actually click on the gradient car park, the colour car park as I call it, up there. And you can edit it from here if you want. So you can choose a colour from there. You even have access to this colour picker. But if I just show you, just changing that colour in there and losing it, it changes it there. Now, the easiest way, however, to do this is to choose the bottom colour node, go up and get my colour picker, down to the bottom of my reference image and click once to apply that to the bottom. Then go to the top point, do exactly the same again at the high point of the pink over there and click once to apply that. Now that is absolutely perfect. It matches. Or does it? It does and it doesn't. This point that I've added here, so let's zoom in and have a look. This point that I've added is only just outside my shape. And if I take this down, you can see now the colours don't match. But if I take this upwards, if I take that up right to the top edge, then it would be perfect because I picked it from the top edge here. I actually picked it right from the top edge there. So I can extend a gradient even outside a shape and it will apply in that way. So it will work brilliantly. Trust me on that. You can apply that gradient and you can drag the points outside. Don't need to worry about that. Right, so what I now need to do, now I've got the gradient and it's all correct, is zoom back out again. So Command and 0 to zoom out and use this to position myself over this. And actually it's quite tricky now. It's the right size and colour. Can't quite see the edges. So what I can do to help me with that is to drag out a grid, a guide. Drag out a guide from over on the left-hand side, which gives me a vertical guide. Drag one down from the top ruler, the bottom there, and that would be the perfect position for this. Luckily, I have snapping to guides turned on, which is up here, snap to guides. Now I know that that is perfectly in the right place. At which point I can turn off my reference image, turn on my rounded rectangle. Doesn't look great though, because my rounded rectangle is the wrong colour, needs to be completely white. I'll choose white. And my heart is behind it, so I'm going to use Command and square bracket to take it upwards. And now it's completely in the right place. So there is my iOS icon. We will look possibly later at exporting that, but I'll save that because that's my health app. So I'll stick it on my desktop, health app icon. If I could spell, I would be dangerous, wouldn't I? Doing the old talking and typing again. So you can use very simple techniques to build up something that, hey, Apple created one just like that. Can't get better than that, can you? Right, okay, so I'm going to close that file down. Let's go and have a look at something else. So I am looking for my data on my other screen. And we've done that one, we've done that one. Let's have a look at this one. I'm going to open up a file that we have already seen. The difference between the first time we saw it and this time we saw it is that now it is a native Affinity file. Now, I said these trees were black and I wasn't happy with the fact these trees were black. So what I can do is double click on here. I didn't even need to double click, did I? I can click once Let me get that and select it. And hold the Shift key down and select the second one. What I then need to do, up here I've got recent colours, and it looks like I've been playing around with greens before. I have a green that I can colour that. There we go. So very simple to do that. I've already done that once. I'm now going to zoom back out. And what I've got here, I have other elements, other trees. I have 3 trees in the background that I would like to be identical to the first trees. I'm going to show you a different way to do that other than making a selection, because as these things get tiny, although you can zoom in, you might be hard pushed to make a decent selection. But what you can do is copy these shapes. So I've copied these 2 trees on the right. I'm going to move in a little bit and just select my other elements. So holding the Shift key down, I've got a decent selection. Now, if I'd done more than applied green, if I'd applied, what could I have applied? I could have applied all kinds of effects from here. I could have applied a border to them. I could have applied lots of different things. And if I'd done that, I wouldn't want to go in here. It wouldn't be a simple matter of just filling it with a different colour. It would have meant doing 3, 4, 5 things repeatedly. But I've just copied those shapes. Wouldn't it be good if I could paste the properties from them in here? Well, you can. If you go up to Edit, you have options in here. And one of them is Paste Style. So if I just select Paste Style, it takes all of the style that is on the first shape that I copied and pastes just the style information. It doesn't paste the actual shape. If I'd done that, I would end up with big trees. So let's see big trees. Have you put big trees on there? Let's have a look. Have you put those big trees in the same place? Now you're not even letting me move my big trees, are you? In fact, you've got very giddy with that. Let's have a look. Let's see if I have got trees that I can't move trees, it's not having it. Okay, but, oh, now it's moving it. Thank you for that, 20 minutes later. Never mind. Right, so I've taken the properties of that and I have pasted that onto something else. So if for whatever reason I wanted a green snowflake, I can do that as well. So just remember to paste style, which is Command, Shift and V, which you may have allocated somewhere else in another application, so do be careful with it. So very, very simple to do that with it as well. I actually use that one quite a lot. There are other things you can do, which would definitely be in a 102 course. You can make styles and things like that, but that's one way to do it if you don't want to go to all of that trouble. Okay, let's close that file down. Don't need to save that one. Right, I have another file. This one's fun. This is just pure joy. So I'm opening up an orange ornament. There we go, orange ornament. One of my Christmas ornaments. I will take all of these bits of it and I will put that out of the way because I want to work down here with this. I have a Christmas tree ornament. Now what I'm showing you with this is power duplicating and zooming. Power duplicate is such a time saver, it's amazing. What I need to do with this to power duplicate, you can duplicate an item by pressing Command and J. And what should happen is we have a copy of it. There we go. It put it straight on the top of the other one, but we have a copy of it, a duplicate of it, which is exactly the same as Command and C, Command and V, not Command and B, woman. There we go. That does the same thing. But there is a benefit to doing this. And another way to do it is to hold down the Option key and drag. So making sure I've got that selected, Option key and drag, and it gives you a duplicate of it. So far, so good. But the beauty of this is, once you've duplicated it once, as long as it's still selected, if you use Command and J again, it will keep duplicating it. And it will make sure that the, in this case, third one, is the same distance from the second one as the second one is from the first one, and so forth. So it gives you a uniform way to copy it. That's pretty good, but it gets better than that. So let's delete all of those. Let's try that again. So hold the Option key down and drag. Without letting go, I'm going to use this rotation handle. I'm going to rotate it slightly. I could scale it too if I wanted, but let's scale it a little bit. Let's go crazy. Right, I'm going to do that. And now Command and J. And it does that. So each duplicate it creates is proportionally the same amount smaller than the previous one. And that's the effect you get with it. This has got possibilities. Right, I'm going to get rid of those now, because what I'm going to do, try and do this in the right place, hopefully. But I've got one I did earlier in case it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, it wouldn't be them, it would be me. So let's try and do it this way by rotating it slightly and making it considerably smaller. And then Command and J. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You can see that that white handle is counting round as it goes. 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 30 copies of that there. How many can we actually see? Well, with my increasingly failing eyesight, not many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think I could see 10 at an absolute push. But remember that level of zoom we talked about? If I hold the Option key and pull down on my mouse and keep going and keep going and keep going, it will zoom me in. If anybody does want to count the 30 as we go, feel free. Other way to do that is with the zoom tool. And if I use the zoom tool, up in the top left corner, I can actually see the level of zoom. So let's watch that crank up as I click, 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 and keep clicking until I get to the end, which is somewhere down here, honestly. Maybe 30 was ambitious, but the end will be there. The end is in sight, as they say. Keep zooming, keep zooming. There we go. There is the very last one. Oh, now I have upset it. Now I have upset it, so I need to zoom out a little bit. Where have you disappeared to? There we go. There you are. So there's the very last one. And even on that very last one, if I zoomed in around there, and I'm going a little bit too much, it's not liking it at that point, is it? Let me zoom out a little bit. But I could actually make changes to that. I could select that and get ambitious and change it. There you go. Change the last one to pink. And I am zoomed into, what level did we get to? I wouldn't even like to hazard a guess with that. It's either 27 million or 2.7 million. I'm not sure if there's a character after that. 27 million, I think. So 27 million%. I'm now just going to zoom back to 100%. Well, 92% to be precise, pedantically precise. And that's how fast it was. It's very, very smooth when it comes to zooming in. In fact, if I just hold the Option keys out and down and just do that, just move into it, it pixelates fractionally as it's thinking about it, but it clears incredibly quickly. Do bear in mind the stress on this machine right now with the live broadcast. There we go. So it's very, very smooth. There we go. So you can power duplicate and zoom. And that's what that actually means. So I'll save that file, close it down. Right, we looked briefly at a very swift gradient. Let's have a look at another thing that you can do with gradients. I have here a very simple file. It has a skyline in it, which is just a vector image. There we go. It should just be, it's a group of curves, just curves inside there in the shape of a skyline. And then we have this sky, and that sky is a rectangle which is behind the sky. Behind the skyline, rather, the buildings. Now, at the moment, it has a white fill. Nothing to stop me adding colours to that. So if you wanted that for a logo or something like that, very, very simple to do that. Again, you can go into your colours. You can use this to choose different colours, different hues, whatever you need to do with it. But we had a very swift look at gradients. Let's have a look at what you can do with the gradients. Because the gradient we used was a very simple gradient, so 2 points on a gradient. You can make it more complicated than that. Right, I will add a gradient to this. So I will draw one from left to right, and it's by default got those 2 points on it. In this case, it has a light green and a deeper green at the other end. You've already seen that you can change that, so you can make that just darker. You can completely change it like that. But you can also move that gradient. So let's get it looking sort of nighttime-ish. Let's go for a nighttime-ish gradient. And at the other end, should we have a setting sun-ish? There we go. Something like that, with a little bit more orange in it. Doubt it would be going from left to right, though. So what you can do is take that gradient down, drag the other end of it, and just flip that gradient round. So if we take that one up to the top, that one down to the bottom, that works. You can have the gradient on a diagonal, so I'm taking it to the corner, going across to the other corner, or you can move it to wherever you think that looks best. So if you just want a little bit of blue coming in, you can actually drag it outside or you can have a lot more blue by dragging it back. So very, very simple to do that with your gradient. But all of that, so moving this one back down here, is on a linear gradient. So as we go up to the options available from that context sensitive toolbar, there are other types of gradient. You could have an elliptical gradient. That one in this circumstance actually looks quite nice. A little bit nuclear winterish, but it works for a skyline. You have other options. You can have radial gradients. In this case, that one is pretty similar. That is based on where that is actually coming from. So there we go. I'll leave it slightly to the side. You can have conical gradients, whereby you can move this down. So that's going from one colour to another, but they're both pretty similar. So if we just change one end, you can see you get a sort of a Terry's moonlight effect. If you're from Britain, you know, so you know what I'm talking about. A 50-50 effect on that gradient there. Right, let's go back. Wrong one. I was in my conical, wasn't I? Or you can just have a solid one in there. So whatever you need to do with that. So I'm going to go back to linear, and I am going to go up to there. So let's, that one's not too bad actually. That doesn't look that bad. But I will change it slightly because I do love to tinker. I've got to tinker, haven't you? Should we take it up to red? There we go, nice orangey one. Right, what you can do in here is you can make changes in here. You can actually add points. You can change the colour in here. You can insert stop points. So what I mean by stop points, you have an end stop point, a beginning stop point, and you have this little marker in the middle that's telling you that that is the midpoint. And you can move that midpoint. So you can actually move that up or move that down. So if you just wanted a little tiny tint of yellow behind those buildings, you can just do that by moving that. But we'll take that back to the midpoint, which is where it is there. What you can do is add points. So as I move over that, I don't know if you can see it, it's very tiny, but there is a plus sign next to that. So I'll do it at the top so we can actually see it and click. And as I click, it adds an extra point. And now this midpoint is showing me the midpoint between this colour stop, the one I've just added, and the top colour stop. And this midpoint has moved to be the midpoint between the new colour stop and the first colour stop. Now, this mid one at the moment is filled with the colour on that gradient as it would have been between the two other points, but I can change that to something completely different in the middle. So literally I can change it to something completely radical, and it is in the middle. So yeah, not the best effect I've ever seen, but you get the idea. So I can drag that down and get a very different effect from it. So we could add pink into there, couldn't we? And if I bring this yellow from the bottom up, then you can see the kind of effect that has. And I can also move these points along. So if I wanted that pink in the middle, I could do that. And you can add in as many points as you need. So I'm just clicking to add these extra points. If I add them at that point there, and then I stretch this out, you will get a very different effect. So you were down there you go. And clicking up there like that. As you've just seen, if you want to move that over there, you can actually just click and drag. You don't have to do what I'm doing. I'm doing that to show you how it's actually working, but you can just click and drag to add that on. So gradient's incredibly, incredibly powerful. Okay. Right, let's save that file and lose that file. Right, going on to something completely different now. Something that actually, for me, is more useful than you would imagine it to be at this point. Now, these were Christmas bookmarks, I think. Not sure why I had numbers on them. But what I've got is 4 elements in there, 4 distinct areas in here. And I have, there's a group. There's one group that I've got there. Now, this is a group that I was working with, so I've got that there. That's a group that I'm working with. Now, what I'd like to do is add in a couple more of these shapes, these snowflake shapes. So there's one shape, here's another one. Now, this one and this one are actually hanging out of the edge. You can see them. If I zoom in, you'll see them even better. As I hover there, you can see like a blue area, and it is outside it. How did that happen? Because you're not actually seeing it. So, if I bring this shape over and say, right, well, I sort of want this one in that gap at the top. So here's my shape, and I'll just put it in the right place. that one is actually working and it shouldn't be, but it's working for the wrong reason. I know what I mean. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to put in a new layer and I'm going to paste it in there. Hopefully that will keep it separate from the other one. Yes, that looks like it's working, doesn't it? There we go. Because it's actually outside of my area. I'm going to move this one. That'll make life a whole lot easier. What I will do here is I will scale that one down. I need my shift key, don't I? And move it into place down there. So what I need is this shape up here. I need it to be there, but not hanging outside. That's a problem. You can see this here. Now, there is a way to do that. There's a couple of ways to do that. I will show you both ways, or I will endeavour to show you both ways. That's what I will do. Right, you're that one out there, aren't you? I need you in there, but not inside there. You going to work for me? Oh, you are. That's good. Do love it when something works. It makes a change, doesn't it? Right, so I have this shape, and I have this shape that are both hanging on the outside. This one's less of a problem because it's not actually hanging over here, but it could be if it was a little bit bigger. If I wanted it a little bit bigger, then it would be causing a problem. So both of those shapes would be causing me problems. So I will take this shape here. Right, what I need to do with it. You can crop a vector. I should let you think about that for a bit. You'll probably be familiar with cropping bitmap images. Usually you're trying to lose a background, maybe take something out of an image, but you can actually crop vectors. You have in here a crop tool, vector crop tool. When I click on that, the points on the edge of the shape change. So as I'm hovering over it, you can see they have changed. If I go back and get that tool, so get my move tool, you can see before they were circular. So there's a definite difference when I get the crop tool. When I get that crop tool, I can just literally crop it. I can crop that back to the very edges of what I want behind. And now, although that shape is there, you can see the blue outline, it's not causing me any problems in terms of it being hanging outside this area. So that's one way to do it. Right, let's take this one and make it much bigger. Let's take it down here. Let's say we want that one there. This is another way to do it. I can copy that, and in this case I've cut it, and then going down to the group that is containing what I need, I can actually use a different paste option, which is paste inside. And when I paste inside, it doesn't hang anything on the outside. If I try selecting that, you can see it would be over here, but I've actually pasted it inside of a group. So those are two ways to make sure that your vectors stay constrained to where they actually are. Right, if you are confused by that, let me reiterate that. I'm going to copy that, I'm going to get a new file, and I'm going to make a much simpler example, which is I'm going to get a square. I will give that square a little bit more of an exciting colour than that. So I have my rectangle. I have on the clipboard what I copied from the snowflake. I have a copy of the snowflake, and what I'm going to do with that is go up to edit. In fact, I'm going to paste it first, and you see it's very tiny, so I need that much bigger. So let's make sure it's where I want it. I want it sort of up there, and I actually have, I should have copied a different one, but never mind that, I'll fix it. What I'm going to do is uncrop it. I will uncrop it. There we go. That should stick it on the outside. That should give me problems. There we go, on the outside. What I'd like to do is make sure that that is pasted on the inside there. So I'm going to cut it. I'm going to select my shape. I'm going to go up to edit, and I'm going to paste inside. And it has pasted it inside. You can see when I click the shape, the two will move together. My snowflake is there. If I double click it, I can move it and the extra bits will come in. So it all remains editable, but it's actually on the inside. And how it's done that over here is it has added, let's open that up in the right place, there we go. It's actually added this sort of mask to it over there. So that is how it has done it. It has got a crop on it in there. Right, okay, it's actually pasted it inside that shape. So we've lost the bit that's overhanging at the edge. Right. That's actually very useful when you're working with things like letterheads, business cards, and elements like that. Right, so let's have a look at the time. Oh, we've got time for a couple of rather good ones, if I do say so myself. We're doing another session. This is a 101 session, so it's teaching you really basic concepts and principles of how vector applications work. But our 102 is the next session, and this is really a sort of preview for 102. It's a very basic look at what it can actually achieve when it comes to UI and UX. So I have this vector shape. It's an iMac. As you can tell from that desktop image, which isn't my favourite, the ubiquitous leg ulcer I call it, that was Mountain Lion. So this is an old vector that I've used in various presentations. And of course, I'm on Sierra right now, and High Sierra's almost out. So it would look a little bit dated if I used that exactly as it was. It would look very dated. So I could do with replacing that wallpaper, which if I open this up, it actually says replace screen image. This is a mock-up file. So it's going to allow me to do that. And one thing I could do is actually just go and find the wallpaper for Sierra. And I could just stick it in there as a bitmap. But where's the fun in that? Because, as I said, High Sierra's coming. So what can we do about that? Don't want to be doing this job 10 times, do we? Well, I actually have, and again, this is quite old, it is a UI kit. It is a Yosemite UI kit. So it has Yosemite. And if we look over here, I can open that up. I can turn things on and off because it is an Affinity Designer file. So I can add my menu bar. I could add the dock. I could even add elements of Safari. So let's look at an old Netflix page. I could do that. They were even advertising Yosemite. So this is a great way to create screenshots. Instead of taking a screenshot, create one. And if you create a screenshot, it remains editable, like these. So you can go back in and fix them when they get dated, which is our problem. So how do we fix it? All right, so I'm going to turn those off. And we can leave everything else. It's just the Yosemite wallpaper that's the problem. But, as you should be able to see over on the right-hand side, I have two wallpapers here. I have High Sierra and I have an iMac Pro. So I'm well ahead of myself. Right, but they are turned on. We can't see them. What's the problem? If I go back into Yosemite and I turn off, take the tick out of the Yosemite wallpaper, my High Sierra wallpaper's there. Fantastic. Brilliant. And if I want to see my iMac Pro, that's just behind it. So I've instantly updated a screenshot, in massive air quotes, by making sure that it was never a screenshot in the first place. I mocked it up in Affinity Designer. So that's fantastic. Let's turn High Sierra back on. There's my file. I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to close that file now. I've saved it. I'm going to close it. I'm going to go back to my other file. And in my other file, I could do with copy and pasting basically what was in my UI kit. There's a better way to do that. If I go into File and I choose Place, and it will go onto my desktop, which is not where it needs to be. It needs to be in my data folder, which is not in the right order, and we're placing files. There is my Yosemite UI kit. You can see it was just saved, literally a couple of minutes ago, and open that file. There it is. It loads it into my mouse pointer, my cursor there, loads it in. That's what the little down pointing arrow means over the circle. And now all I need to do is literally draw it out on there, and it will even snap. I've got snapping turned on. It will snap so it's perfectly positioned. Fantastic. It's even put it in the right place, which is just above this replace screen image. I can turn that off. It won't make any difference. But when I say positioned it perfectly, it's positioned it perfectly because it's behind the gloss. And if you're thinking, what's the gloss? What difference does that make? The gloss is there. It's very subtle, but without it, it would look very flat. The gloss is just on that diagonal on the right-hand side, and it makes a massive difference. That is probably fantastic enough as it goes. But I'm going to go into a different mode, which is I'm going to go into Window and I'm going to go into Separated mode. That will take me out to this mode. If you've used Pixelmator, this should look instantly familiar. Right, the reason I'm going to do this is to show you, and where on earth have you put my layers? Well, my layers are on a different screen. There's my layers. Let's bring them back on. There we go. Right. It's even better because I want to edit this now. I'd like to see that iMac Pro. I would love to see that. So I'm going to double click on it, and it has opened up that file. Now, it's not opened up the file off the disk. It's opened up the file that is now embedded in the iMac mockup. You can see that because it says embedded in the title bar. Right, but it's exactly the same as the file we've already edited. So if I want to turn off the High Sierra, I can do that. In fact, what you should be noticing, so this is the one I'm editing. This is the one I'm making changes to. I'm just going to zoom out of that so we can see all of it. Look what's happening behind. Look what's happening in my actual file, my entire mock-up iMac here. In real time, as I am in here and I am turning the High Sierra wallpaper on and off, and I'm turning my Netflix on, there it is, and my Yosemite, which I need to update, it's happening in real time. It's amazing. So I don't want all of those actually. What I want is, oh, let's stick with High Sierra because it's so pretty, isn't it? It's very pretty, that. In this UI kit, you've also got extra options. So you can be showing all kinds of other dialog boxes there. So you can actually make up your own screenshots for when you need screenshots. So that's what I use this for. I know UI and UX developers and designers will use it to mock up what an app should look like. But in terms of mocking up things, screenshots, it works absolutely fantastically. Don't actually need to worry about taking screenshots anymore. So I'm going to leave that with my High Sierra there. Should I leave on one of those things? What should I leave turned on? Should we just have a finder window? There we go. In fact, what I can do is show you while I'm doing that. If we go to dark mode, I can actually turn on dark mode, which is something that I don't particularly use. Let's turn on dark mode. There is dark mode. I never have used dark mode, but if I wanted to take screenshots to show what it would look like, this is a brilliant way of doing it. So I will leave dark mode turned on there. I can then, with this file here, close that down, and I'm back to my original file, and I've changed that entire screenshot that was in there. So I use that quite frequently, not particularly for things like this. I actually embed things like logos and things like that, so I can keep the logo editable, but it's outside of the file. So it works just as well for things like that. To see that in real time, as we've just seen it now, I went into separated mode, but I'm now going to flick back into the mode I prefer, because separated mode disorientates me. I have stuff all over the place and I lose track of where it is. Okay, let's have a look at that. Right, we are done. We are done. So I can go back and do a wrap up. So, recap what we did. Lots of things, lots of basic concepts and principles that you will want to try yourself. If you would like to get Affinity Designer and you don't already have it, you can find it available from the Mac App Store. It is currently $48.99. Sometimes there's a 20% discount on it, but not at the moment, unfortunately. But it is well worth the investment. If you're unsure, there is a trial version available directly from Serif Software. Serif Software are the people who make the Affinity products. There is a full 10-day trial. So feel free to download that trial and take it on a good demo and see how you go with that. When you are doing that, if you would like to watch more videos about Affinity Designer and get other tips, tricks and tutorials, you can do that on my blog, elainegiles.co.uk/affinity-designer. There are also lots of tutorials available from Vimeo, and the Vimeo videos are available from Serif themselves. And there are a lot of videos up there, well over 150 dedicated to Affinity Photo. Another option you have is to use the workbook. There is an Affinity Designer official workbook. Again, this is available from Serif. This came out October last year. And it's very high quality, lots of detail in there, taking you through case studies and projects. So you can pick up tips as you go. There's an example of what it looks like on the inside. It gives you full information about the interface and how the tools work, etc. And it does that through case studies. So I can highly recommend that one. I got that as soon as it was released. Another thing you might find useful is keyboard shortcuts. I use lots and lots of keyboard shortcuts all the time. Many of them are very similar to Photoshop and other applications you may have used. But there is some great guides, and I've put a link to them at elainegiles.co.uk/affinity-designer. So again, you can go there, not only get videos, but also downloads of things like these shortcut templates that you can get. As I very briefly mentioned within the demo, that was Affinity Designer 101, but we'll next be taking a look at the next level of Affinity Designer with a 102 session. Things that we've not covered, we've not looked at in this basic session are things like working with text, also smart embedding. Now, if you think what you've seen is smart embedding, you've not seen anything yet. That was just the tip of the iceberg. That's the basic stuff. Think smart objects in Photoshop on steroids, if you're familiar with that. If you're not, just trust me on this, it's magic. Talking of magic, you can also make magic with the export persona. Now, not so long ago, I wrote, I will admit, not line by line, there's a lot of copy and pasting involved, but I wrote a 4,000 line JScript file. And what it did was export and format a collection of images from Fireworks. And I was constantly tweaking it and editing it, and generally it was a pain. All of that I now do directly from within Affinity Designer. No scripting required, and I'll show you how in session 102. If you are watching this live, or you're watching it before whenever it is, which is next week, you'll be able to watch it live. So check out my channel and you'll be able to watch that session live. If not, I will put a link to it and you will be able to see it. So thank you very much for being with me for this live session, or if you watch the replay, thank you for making it this far into that replay. If you would like more tips, tricks and tutorials, check out my channel, which is on YouTube, The Elaine Giles. I think you can also put in Elaine Giles as well. There's a long story behind that, which I won't bore you with. And I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear what you are doing with Affinity Designer and or Affinity Photo and any other applications you're using. Talk to me. I would love that. So you can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google+, and YouTube, as I've said. So if you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and do contact me, as I say. But what I'm now going to do is head out into Q&A. And see what questions people have got. If you've got questions after the event, do put them in the comments below and I will get back to you. So until next time, I will see you next time. I'm hoping that's enough of a gap to edit on that. And I nearly swore editor of YouTube's. Hopefully that's enough. Right, I did see questions. I saw little questions flying past as I went. So do I have questions? Come on, Mike, say yes or no. Do I have questions? Yes. Let's get OneNote up, because that's where you put some of the questions. Okay. Right, let me have a look then. Have you put them in there? All of them? Ah, we have. Do you think they'll be releasing... Oh, right, this is a good question. This is Javiuk. I hope I'm saying that right. Do you think they'll be releasing Affinity Designer for iPads? I can tell you they absolutely are. If you go to Vimeo and you look at Affinity Design, Serif's channel, you will find there is already a preview video of Affinity Designer for iPad. Also, about 10 days ago, one of the developers gave you a sneak peek of what it looks like on iPad Pro today. So I'll find the link to that and I'll add it. So yes, they definitely will be releasing it for iPad. And my take on that, and I have no insider information, would be sooner rather than later. I'm hoping it's not one of these in the next 10 years affairs. No, I think it'll be sooner rather than later there. Right, I need to zoom in on this. I can't see that font, Mike. Can you make that bigger? I don't know what you're doing with it. Mike's copying and pasting. Yeah, it's tiny. Can you possibly make that a little bit bigger? Because otherwise I'll have to zoom in and that would never do, would it? Because people can see my desktop and they'd be seasick if I zoomed in on the secondary monitor. That's better. Right. Can you send links of the icons? Right, which icons are these we're talking about? Is this the health icon that I created? If it is, I can certainly do that. If not, tell me what icons you're talking about. Right, where is the source for the vector stock images without selling your soul in a voodoo contract? Where is a good source for free vectors? Right, some of my vectors come from somewhere that I did pay to join, which is Stock Unlimited. They are very high quality stuff, but you can get lots and lots of vectors. Now, let me see if I can find some of them. One's freevector.com. Another one is psdgraphics.com that do have vectors in there from time to time. One of the best sources, though, and they've got great search on there, is Dribbble. If you go to Dribbble, lots of people are showcasing their work. So it works in a similar way to Behance. So it's basically an online portfolio for designers. But very many of them let you download the files. So I've got lots of mock-ups and things that I've collected from people on Dribbble. I always do credit them. So you'll notice that the name was in that file of the Yosemite mock-up. And there was also a link there to get the map as well. So I always credit people who are doing those, but you can download them and you don't actually need to credit. So I can recommend Dribbble and Behance, but I spend more time on Dribbble, to be honest. It's got much more of a community and people tend to share more. So let me know about those icons that you were talking about, and we'll see how we go there. Right, so other questions?
There's a link at the bottom.
A link, right, okay, I'm going there. I'm going to this link. What's going to happen when I go to this link? Is this from you or from somebody else? Oh, very well done. That's one of yours, isn't it?
Let me share it.
I'll share that. I'll put this Droppler that Mike's got on there. Excellent. That's not bad at all, is it? Slightly off centre. You probably didn't have your snapping turned on. Or it would have been easy. Yeah, if you got your snapping turned on. The other thing is the little corners.
Yeah.
What were you trying to do? You're trying to square them off.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering why the lower left one is totally different than the other three.
You're still screen sharing.
I am. Why?
Oh,
It'll come through. You've got your 30-second delay on it. Not bad at all. I'll give Mike some private lessons and we'll have a look at that again for 102.
How many out of 10, guys? 10 for effort.
Oh, 10 for effort. Absolutely a 10 for effort. That's not a bad example, though, is it? Because it's made up of basic shapes. So, yeah, absolutely. We'll have that. I'll make sure I've got a copy of that before he deletes it.
On to the spirograph comments, Graham.
I'm going to make a copy of that. So I've got a copy and we'll do a comparison when he's seen 102. There you go.
It's not a snooker table, Graham.
Snooker table, there's a good example. Yeah. Right, Graham, there's your challenge for the week. Snooker table in Affinity Designer. There you go. Consider yourself challenged. Right, okay, I'm going back to my questions that you've put in OneNote here. Right, okay. Can Affinity Designer open sketch files? Oh, would that it could, but no, not directly. To be honest, not much can open a sketch file. Sketch can, yeah, just about. My subs are due, so I'm not feeling very gracious at the moment. Sketch can open a sketch file, yes, absolutely. I can preview it. I think PicSave lets you preview it. But what I've been doing is I've been saving out my sketch files to SVGs and then opening the SVG in Affinity Designer. I am in the process of translating, converting, taking away from Sketch, however you'd like to word it, all of my sketch files. I'm trying to convert them to Affinity Designer files. So absolutely, that's the way I'm doing it. But no, sadly, it cannot open them directly. I don't know if that's something they could do or if they would need Sketch's permission to do that. The other problem with doing it is that Sketch has a subscription model. So they are tinkering with their app constantly. Because there's no release schedule to stick to, they are going in and they are making changes not only to the app itself, but to the file format, the internal Sketch file format, to support those changes. And because of that, often you can't take a Sketch file back to a previous version of Sketch. This also plays into the subscription model, of course. If you have an older version of Sketch, you're not going to be able to open those new version files. So because the file format is constantly evolving, it would be very difficult to say, yes, we support Sketch, because you might be able to support Sketch today and then not tomorrow. So no, not directly, but the process I've got going via SVG seems to work reasonably well. Okay, another question. How does this compare to Vectormator mode in Pixelmator? That is also a good question. Pixelmator is never going to compare with a full-blown vector app. Having said that, probably Affinity Designer isn't going to compare favourably with Affinity Photo. Otherwise, there wouldn't be two apps. So the Vectormator mode that's in Pixelmator is sort of tagged on afterwards, and it's the basics of working with vectors. So if you need a square and a circle and you want to intersect the two, you're fine. I do find Vectormator mode quite confusing the way it works, but it does work. So once you've got your head around how it works, it does work. If you only ever do very, very, very light work with it, then you would get away with Vectormator mode. And if you're comfortable with Pixelmator and how it works, then, and again, no need of an advanced tool, then you can stick with it. For me, I virtually live in Affinity Designer. Assets that I design, and I do that constantly. I create presentation assets. I make branding kits. I've got website assets to create. I do flyers, posters, letterheads, you name it. There's no way that I would do that in anything other than a vector application. I have done it in Illustrator, did do that for many years. I then actually left Illustrator because I am not a fan. It's a very, very powerful app, but boy, nothing's logical. Nothing worked the way my brain worked. So as soon as I could get to Sketch, I switched to Sketch, which I think, looking back, was 2012, 2013, something like that. 2012, I think. And I stayed with Sketch for a long, long time. Through the rough times, believe you me, when it crashed every 5 minutes. But they went subscription, which I don't object to on principle. But the subscription model that they have implemented, I absolutely loathe. Not because it's paid for. I have no problem with paying even on an annual basis. Could do without it, but I don't mind doing it if it's an app I use. And I did use Sketch all the time. The point for me, which was the deal breaker, was that you can only have it on one machine. Now, that's just not going to work. I have my main machine. I have a demo machine. I have my laptop. I have a machine in the studio where I record my demos. One license isn't going to cut it. And if you think I'm paying for 5 when there's only me using it, you can think again. So with the limit on the license, I decided I would take a look at Affinity Designer, particularly because I was using Affinity Photo. And there was just something the first time I tried Affinity Designer, I didn't gel with it straight away, probably because I was in Sketch mode and things worked differently. When I came back to it the second time, I've been using Affinity Photo. And for reasons best not discussed to do with a machine that died, I didn't even have Photoshop installed, so I was living in Affinity Photo. I just instantly took to Designer and wondered where it had been all my life and what on earth I'd been playing around in Sketch for. So at that point, I switched to Affinity Designer. And as you can see, with all that I do with vectors, I do need something that works, that's flexible. And Affinity Designer not only can handle everything I've thrown at it, it's actually a delight to work with. It never ceases to delight me. So what more can you say about a piece of software? So if you're okay in Pixelmator and you have very limited vector needs, stay with it. If you want to learn vectors from the ground up and take it much further and start building branding kits and things, then I would go for a full-blown vector app, and Affinity Designer is the one I would recommend. Okay, what else have we got? This one from Heather. How does it cope opening freehand files?
Yeah.
Right, freehand. Oh, I remember freehand. Freehand was... Did Macromedia buy it from somewhere? Because it seems to have been around for a long time. Late 80s, Freehand arrived, and Freehand was amazing. Macromedia made 2 applications that to me were simply stunning. Fireworks and Freehand. They were just amazing because they broke the rules for the app that they were. So if you think about Fireworks as being a vector app, it had pixel editing in it. It was amazing. Well ahead of its time. That was from Macromedia. Freehand, again, Macromedia. Not just making little bits of vector stuff, making big bits of vector stuff. You could do entire reports in Freehand. So it was sort of a hybrid between a vector app and a DTP app. Again, absolutely well ahead of its time. I don't think I appreciated back in the late 80s, early 90s, just how revolutionary these apps were. But Adobe, obviously not pleased with the competition, bought Macromedia. And unfortunately, both Fireworks and Freehand were then sunsetted, as Google say, binned, as you and I would say. which left people high and dry in terms of file formats. Now, the good news is, yes, Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer can open freehand files. So if I just show you that, because I've got a freehand file here. So let me get my freehand file, where have you disappeared to? Let me get my Finder up. Other file formats, there we go. And is it you or you? Never mind. Right, what I've got here, let me show you these files. I have a folder, and in my folder it has, there we go, other file formats. I've got a freehand 10 file and a freehand 11 file, as well as this vector app here. Let's start with this freehand 10 file. I was pleasantly surprised, if I just stretch this out a little bit and move it all back so we can see it. We look at the kind that is. It says Affinity Openable, and what it means is openable with Affinity Designer. So because I haven't got anything else that will open a freehand file, if I double click on that, it will actually open with Designer. It tells you it's assigned a profile, and there is the actual contents of that file. So we have all of these elements in here, a little bit primitive by comparison with today's standards, but no doubt this file is ancient. Everything down here is editable with the gradients that's on it and everything else. And there's even a grid there, which you may struggle to see. Can I change that so you can actually see it? Could we put, have you got a stroke on it? Oh, you're saying you've not. Let me put a stroke, there we go. There's me increasing the stroke. So if I do that, and you're going to make that black, you're not going to play ball with that, are you? Unless, no, that's not going to do it either, so never mind. Ah, there we go, there it is, black. So there's a grid in there as well. So yes, it opens that one. That's a freehand 10 file. So let's not save that. Let's go back. And the other one I had was a freehand 11 one. So let's double click that to open it. That's the starting point for a mock-up for a games console. So you can tell how old these are when games consoles used to look like that. But yes, it can open freehand files, no problem at all. And again, everything that's in here. Actually, that one's curves. That's the starting point. So it is just curves. I have got another one of this thing partially finished. And the only thing it struggled with was a gradient, but yes, it brought in all of that with some interface elements on it. So yes, it can open those. So hopefully that's shown you that it can do that. Right, we got any more questions? Right, I spotted one. Wasn't the one about the layers panel? What's the one about the layers panel? Let me go and have a look.
Yeah.
Is it there? Can you paste that in for me? Yep. Need the whole question. Just making sure it's... I think OneNote's having a good old think about it. Yeah. It's thinking about it. I'm thinking about those free vectors. Thinking about other places I get free vectors from. I'll have to do a blog post on that, won't I? Just dust the old blog off and write 10 places to get good vectors from. That's what I'll do. Right, is this the one when I selected in the layers panel? Is that the one? Right, when you select something, you seem to be taken in the layers panel, but I have to hunt for the correct layer. What am I doing wrong? That's a great question. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a file. Hopefully it's still on my recents. Snow scene, there we go. Right, this is made up of lots and lots of layers. If we look on that layers panel over on the right hand side, there are, I haven't counted them, I'm not going there, but there are hundreds and hundreds of layers in there, literally. I'm flicking that up as fast as the mouse can go, and you can see I'm not even halfway yet. Right, but if I wanted to edit these trees again, so let's zoom into those trees. I might want to do something in terms of adding one of these elements down here, the layer effects, to it, in which case I would need to see the layer. If I click to select it, what happens is it instantly shows me that in the layer, in the layers panel. If I go over here, it's showing me all of those. So if I click through these, you can see what's happening. It's selecting it. But that will not happen for you unless you have enabled the option that I enabled. Right, here is what I did. I went into Affinity Designer Preferences, And in here, you get all of these preferences: general, color, performance, user interface, tools, keyboard shortcuts, and miscellaneous. You're going to user interface. There are, as I say, a lot of them. And the option that we're looking for is towards the bottom. It says show selection in layers panel. And that means every time I make a selection, it selects that element in my layers panel. If I just turn that off, so turn that off, come out of there, zoom out to the full image again, and let's go and find a reindeer. So I've selected my reindeer, nothing's happening in my panel. My panel's not moving. So I would then have to go and find that and go all the way up to where it is, and it's on top of the moon. And, oh, it could be anywhere. Could be anywhere. So that's why I have that turned on. So again, preferences, user interface, show selection in the layers panel. Close that. Let's go and find him. And then I've got the curves, and it takes me to it. So if I toggle these off, that's something I've got selected there. Let me zoom in. Must be a shadow I have selected in here. Let me get that. You the right one? There you are. There it is, disappeared. So it selects it for me. So that's a great option to turn on. That's a good question, because that is something that I had turned on and I didn't mention. As I said, I'd made very few changes, but that is one that I had made. Okay, so that's that question. Any other questions? Any other questions? Let me see the chat now. Is that me? Is that me? There I am. Oh, it's so tiny. Oh, no, I can zoom in, can't I? Oh, that's much better. Right, I'm moving across so I can see the chat here. There we go. Right. Image vectorizer from the Mac App Store. Yep, that's a good way of doing it. How complicated is the logo, though, Graham? If it's a really complicated thing, fair enough. But if you look at it and you can kind of x-ray it and think, well, do you know what? That's a rectangle, and that's a rounded rectangle. If you could make that up with shapes, that will probably give you an even better result. What you could do with the vector that you've got, depending on what format it's in, is then take it into Affinity Designer and tidy it up in there. You need the basic skills that I've shown you tonight in terms of working with the nodes and the shapes, grouping things together, the difference between compounding things and making a curve from them. I'd guess from an application like that, it's going to create a single curve for you. And you would then need to edit that with the points that you have, the nodes. So it might be difficult to edit, but how complicated is the logo? This is what we need to know, Graham. And don't forget, you get snooker table for next week. That's your homework. Right, what do you put a link there to? Oh, that's the wallpaper, isn't it? Right. Thank you for your very kind comments. I'm wondering if that Affinity Designer link's a link, you know. Because when you put Elaine Giles in it, that's interesting. It makes it orange. Or it does for me. The one just above Charlie saying another brilliant session. Is it a link on yours? Ah, I see what it's doing. That's amazing. Right, Mike's put a comment into me just under Javier that says elainegiles.co.uk/affinity-designer. And on my screen, I can see from here that it's got the Elaine Giles in orange. I think it's to draw my attention to it because somebody's mentioned my name, which is cool. That's cool. We're liking that. Right, did we ever get to know what links for the icons? Didn't know what icons it wanted. But if you let me know, I will let you know. Right, I'm going back up now. The Mac copes better when unpinching to zoom at higher percentages. Yes, it wasn't coping very well at those percentages, but to be honest, I can forgive that, Grant, because it was silly percentages. Unless you were printing that to something for the side of a building, you probably wouldn't go into the level that I was going into. I didn't show, because I don't use a trackpad all the time, that you can zoom in and out with your trackpad as well and just keep zooming. I've actually got this is ridiculous. I use my trackpad left-handed and I've got a problem with my thumb at the moment. And if I were to try pinching and zooming with my thumb, it actually hurts quite a lot. So there's my excuse. And I can't use it in my right hand because I use my mouse. But when I do use it, I use it left-handed. Oh, then you lot go on about spirographs. I love spirograph. I absolutely loved it. And Mum used to go crazy because I would never put it back in the box. You know, when you put it back in the box and all the things are together. Mine were in a plastic bag. I was bad. Very, very bad. But I did love it. Do you know what I love most about spirograph? Yeah, you can still buy Spirograph. It's amazing stuff. What I loved about it was the pens. You used to get biros that were pink and purple, and that was way back in the day when you didn't get those anywhere else. So I used to love those. Right, so I'm going back up. I think. Yeah, you probably can. Okay, I'm back at the beginning. So I've seen all of the chat. So, oh dear, now I've gone down the bottom of this page. Right, all right. It was simple, green rounded rectangle with black and white. Oh, Graham, in addition to your homework for your snooker table, I insist you have a dabble with it. I bet you'd surprise yourself. As long as you've got the text, the font that's needed. I've been having fun with fonts today. Zapfino, don't ask. It's got things in it that are driving me crazy, and Affinity wasn't helping me. So I need to talk to somebody about that at Serif. It's doing strange things to me, and you know that it's not right when Sketch is working properly, and wait for it, Keynote is doing it right. And Affinity Designer, not so much. So, need to talk to them about that. I've got a sneaking suspicion that the answer's going to be get a better font. But that's not the point, because that's my font and I need it working. So, we'll see what comes of that and I'll let you know. But if the font is a standard font, and if you're not sure what the font is, upload it to, go to Google, type in what the font, and it'll take you to a site where you can upload it, and then you tell it which character's which, and then it comes back with some suggestions, some of which should be free. So you should be able to do it that way. Right, okay. Are we all done with questions? Are we all finished with questions? Who's coming next week? Let me know if you're coming next week. Oh, you'll be here. That's good. That's always good to know that you'll be here. Glad you'll be here, because you're modding. You're actually doing something useful. Right, okay. So thanks for all your great comments. Thank you very much for that. If there is nothing else, then we can head off for something to eat. We can, yeah. It's not Mac Bites Live, but we can head off for something to eat. Talking of which, Mac Bites Lives. Yes, I know a Mac Bites. Yes, we're working on it. Do you know, we were so good, weren't we? We were so planning within a couple of weeks, and then life hit us again. As did 27 summer fairs, I seem to recall. Oh, got a comment. Bought Affinity Designer a year ago. At the time, there was some confusion as to when you purchased it at the time. It was only in the App Store. Don't think that has changed. Am I in the right place here? Yeah. Yes. I think at one point it was available from their site. And I wondered about the logic of buying it directly from them, but then it seemed to disappear to buy directly from them. What I did was I was testing a beta version, and that came directly from them, and that had a check for updates. So maybe that's how come I ended up with multiple versions. But yeah, I bought mine from the store. It just makes life a whole lot easier. But their beta ones do take place outside the store. That is good to know, Graham. Is great too, Wolfrig. Good to see you. Looking forward to it. Will 101 be available somewhere? It will, Grant. It will be available on this link that you're watching on now. But what I will do is I will cut out the beginning where we're just checking everything's working. I will cut that bit out, and I cut out the Q&A at the end as well, or all the waffle at the end. So you're left with just the session. How that works, when it does work, don't get me going, is when I finish the live broadcast, I go into the back end of YouTube and I get to use, oh joy of joys, the YouTube video editor, which is, shall we say, clunky? Does clunky cover it? It does. Clunky is the only way I can describe it cleanly. It's not very precise, which is why I have to leave a big silent gap at the beginning and a big silent gap at the end, because it's like whack-a-mole trying to find the frame to edit. But once I've done that, I put an in and an out and I tell it to trim it. At which point it goes off into a stupor for about 3 hours. Once it's finished the edit, what you will get is just the 101 session you can watch again to your heart's content. So yes, you will be able to watch that. Yep, you will need the link, the YouTube link, not the Elaine Giles /live link. Although, unless you update it, have you already done that? Oh, good. If you don't update it for 24 hours, then it'll be fine.
I'll update it till next week.
That would be even better still. Right. So, yes, you will be able to get that. You just need the YouTube link. Other thing you could do is to go to my channel on YouTube. So it's Elaine Giles. No, it's not. It's youtube.com/Elaine Giles. I think. Can you just check that? Because they keep playing with me. It's all to do with the Elaine Giles and Elaine Giles. I think it's youtube.com/Elaine Giles, isn't it? because they gave me my own name when they said I couldn't have it. It's a long story.
YouTube.com/namedesigner.
Yeah. There you go, you see. You see, that it shouldn't be that.
Your YouTube funnel.
Funnel.
Your YouTube channel featured in my training today.
Oh, good.
Because I wanted to show them how to insert a video. So I said, let's go to YouTube. And your channel was in my history as I started typing.
Well, that could have been much worse. It could have been full of dog videos, couldn't it, dear?
It was,
I thought it would be.
I
thought it would be.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Yes, so you will be able to watch it. You'll be able to watch the edited highlights. If you want to wind it back and watch it now, feel free. I'm not sure what happens if it's in the middle of the edit and you're watching it.
Yeah, so leave it.
That remains to be seen. I'd save it for tomorrow, at which point it will be edited. There will also be a full version available with extra bonus stuff on Matt Bites Learning, which you probably won't want to fiddle with until Christmas. Saying no more about that. But yes, this one broadcasts in 1080. No, it doesn't. It broadcasts in 720p. And we have a 1080 version that we don't put on YouTube. So yeah, there's lots of ways that you can see it again. Just let me know. Right, thank you for the presentation. It had a very different approach than traditional tutorial. Oh, good. I think that's good. Do you think that's a compliment? I'm going to take it as a compliment because I'm in that mood. Like to make it fun, like to make it practical as well. Far too many tutorials are here's a circle, here's a square, and there they are interacting, which I did do, but that's why I took it onto the next level and did a few other things as well. So you can actually see working with real files. It's very easy to work with files that have 4 layers in them, but try working with one that's got 400 layers in it and you'll get annoyed quickly. So that's why I try and do that. Next week, it will be real files. I'm going to be working with, just off the top of my head, a branding kit for a client of mine, which has got letterheads in it with compliment slips, business cards and web graphics. So I'll be working with that file. I'll also be showing you, I talked about this script, this 4,000 line script. I'll be showing you how I create the posters for the events, of which there's 9, I think, 9 different sizes, and one of them needs to be exported to, I think it's 14 different other sizes. They're all 16:9 ratio, but they need to be exported to different sizes. I will show you how I do that in a real file with no scripting required, so there'll be that one. I'll also be showing you mock-ups where you've designed the screen, the UI UX screen in Affinity, and you then want to showcase that in a photograph. So a little bit like tonight with the Yosemite that suddenly became High Sierra, but on steroids, like I said. So hopefully you'll enjoy the next one as well, because I love using real files. That's when things start to go wrong usually, isn't it? Yeah, but if you're using real files, people know that it's a real file and it's not like doing a demo where everything works because it's all sanitized. Do you know, I used to think that sitting at Adobe events. Do you remember when they used to come round to town? They used to hire out big cinema in town, and we'd sit there and we'd watch these demos, and after sort of 2 minutes I'd be like, oh no, he's using the same photos I've seen online. And I'd sit there through it and I'd watch it and I'd think, well, I know what's going to happen next, and more importantly, I know it's going to work. I like the jeopardy of it might work or it might not because it's a real file. And that's what we'll be doing next week. Everything will be real files, I promise you. And if in the meantime you've got something that you would like an opinion on, how could you make this work better? How could you do that in it? Then let me know. You've got all my contact details, which I haven't got on the screen, have I? But you've got all my contact details, so you can let me know. Graham, I want to see this snooker table that you're designing, and I want to see your logo while I work on knocking your bear out of that background. Still working on it. But thank you for your comments. Thank you for staying with me. Thank you for being there. Been most enjoyable. Wouldn't be the same without you, obviously. And as I say, we're going to head off, get some, I think I'll have some fruit, seeing as though ice cream's off the menu. That, again, don't ask. And we'll be back next week. Yes, the old next week. We will be back next week. It is the 3rd of August. How did it get to be August? Yeah, I'm not sure either. I seem to have missed June and July, as does the weather, to be honest. But it will be Thursday night at 7:45 for 8 o'clock. And again, Affinity Designer. You are very welcome, Graham. Sorry about that. I had no idea you needed a channel. It doesn't make sense, does it? I had no idea. But we got comments from people who were in the chat and we weren't there because we were in the other chat. So we thought we'd give it a go. So let me know. Drop me a line. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you managed to deal with that channel, whether you need it or not, whether you can make it private or something like that. Doesn't make sense that. I'll look into it myself as well, because I thought it was a simple matter of just logging into Google and you were done. Clearly not. So let me know how that goes, and we'll sort it out. But until then, I will say good night.
And I will as well.
And we will see you next time. Night, guys.